Hey everyone, I'm Steve from GamersNexus.net, and this video is a discussion I had recently with Chris Roberts from Cloud Imperium Games. He is perhaps best known for his work on Star Citizen, and this time we were talking about technology. So we talked about it as it pertains to the greater games industry and to Star Citizen specifically, and the technology up for discussion primarily was DirectX12 and Vulkan, the two new APIs coming to market that promise to bring developers closer to the metal, so to speak, when they're developing their games, and that should allow more draw calls and greater graphics on lower end hardware. So that discussion is in this video. We had two parts for this video. The second one comes on Friday, and that talks about game engine architecture and game engine design going into the future, the next generation of gaming. So you'll find that on Friday. Come back for that. For this video, please check out the Patreon link if you like this type of content and want to support us doing more of these endeavors. But that's all for my intro, so enjoy the interview with Chris. Link in the description below for the full article if you'd rather read a compressed, written version of this. So I don't know what David sent over to you, but I was hoping we could revisit some of the tech topics.
Sure.
So DirectX
and talk about DirectX12.
Yeah, DX12 and Vulkan a bit, if that's something you know anything about. But
a little bit. I mean, I think our roadmap's DX12 first.
Right.
So that's kind of what our focus is. But the refactoring that we're doing on the low end of the engine will work for both, because I mean they have sort of similar approaches. Sort of being more about the kind of multi-core, multi-threading, multi-job paradigm. Which we're doing a lot in the engine moving towards. So we're doing a fair amount of. It's not just adding more jobs basically, because it's also about refactoring some of the pipeline and how you deal with the data and how you sort of organize your resources.
Right.
So you can be sort of more parallel in that, which is kind of how you get the real power of DX12 or Vulkan. I mean, a lot of people. You could basically take a DX11 sort of renderer and make it DX12 pretty quickly. You're not going to get the benefit of DX12 or sort of the Vulkan stuff until you've done some more fundamental refactoring. So that's kind of what we're doing. Is we're saying, okay, we're going to do it right, so we'll really get the performance gains. And so that's one of the things actually that. Frankfurt, the German office is leading on, because we've got quite a few of the engineers there that built the engine in the first place and have actually been involved in the various, DX9 or DX11 implementations of CryEngine.
Yeah, that was something interesting. I was talking to another editor about, I don't know, how difficult is it to integrate with DX12 as a game developer? I mean,
like I said, it depends on what you're doing. If you just sort of the same way you dealt with DX11, it's pretty easy, but you're not going to get the full power. So the issue is that most game engines were not really written with a massively parallel kind of architecture in mind, and that's fundamentally what you need to do to really get the best benefit out of the next generation of graphics APIs, which is just that you can be feeding lots of stuff at the same time to the graphics card,
right?
And you're not bottlenecked by just one thread or whatever. So I mean, typically, like the old CryEngine has one thread for the rendering, one thread for the main game loop, one thread for the physics, and that works fairly well, like back in the Xbox 360 days, and all the rest of the stuff. There's been slight scaling of it for more PC use. So like the engines move more to a job approach as opposed to a thread approach. So a job approach is you just say, here's a task, bam, and you just kick it off to the job manager. The job manager manages hundreds of thousands of these amongst all the process threads it has available. And that sort of requires sort of thinking of your task differently, compartmentalizing it, making sure it's not dependent on other things and other data. And so there's been some jobification of CryEngine over the last few years, but we're sort of taking it further, because we know that we're building for a PC and we're building for high-end PC. So we have quite a few. We have more threads available with more power than you would typically do even on a next generation console. But part of that is, there's a big task because, the renderer in CryEngine pretty much was sort of built with the conception of a one thread kind of thing going on. So it's a bunch of stuff that gets put on the render pipeline, and then it gets rendered out. But it sort of assumes it's all in the same space, area, etc. And so we need to compartmentalize that better and do a better management of the individual resources, so it's not sort of one monolithic kind of render pipeline.
Right.
That's kind of what the fundamental sort of big work that we're embarking on, and I think that's something that is kind of pretty fundamental to an engine, and they're not always constructed with that in mind. I mean, even UE4, which is obviously a bit newer than CryEngine, it originally the way it's structured was very much along the CryEngine paradigm. It had pretty much the same sort of delineation of threads. Now, I haven't looked at the code recently, but that certainly was quite a while ago. But I think that fundamentally, there is some definite work that has to happen on the low level in all game engines to really push the X12. I mean, it's easy to sort of do the demo like you saw Square Enix do with the Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
But that's just pushing raw poly, and look at the rig it was on. I mean, look at the graphics cards in there. I mean, you could probably do the same with the X11. That's just brute force. To really see the benefit of the X12, it's going to be more about you do that lower level refactoring, and then you'll be able to actually get some pretty interesting performance, even on some cards that aren't quite as powerful, or PCs that aren't quite as powerful.
Right. So for Star Citizen, I would imagine the type of stuff you're trying to do would pretty directly benefit from the newer APIs then. With
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like draw calls, like everyone will tell you in engines and graphic stuff, draw call fight everyone has because it just gets bottlenecked. You can only push so much through one pipe, and that's the thing that you get with, say, a DX12 or a Vulkan, is that if you factored your engine correctly, you're not so bottlenecked by draw calls, and you can put 10x, 100x draw calls through in the same amount of time.
Right.
So that's obviously a big one. I mean, for us, we actually do some stuff already. We've got some tech that we've worked on that kind of also get around the draw calls. So we've got some specific character shaders that are using a very different approach to like how you would texture characters, which is more a sort of material. A material sort of lookup, I guess, would be the best way to say it. So you apply a shader. We don't actually bake textures onto the characters anymore.
Okay.
We have our we have our base character, and then we sort of delineate in a 3D program kind of like the areas that would be say material 1, material 2, material 3, material 4, and then so like if there was only 4 different materials on that character, there would be one draw call because the whole character would be that, and then it's an index lookup from that material into a much higher resolution PBR material that you can like really have high texel density and really scale. So you can get right up on it with the camera and it's not going to break down.
Cool.
So that's kind of for us, that's sort of like some of the tech that we've been doing for characters and the smaller props to allow us to have the fidelity that you can get super up close, but also sort of have a world that has as many assets in the scope that we have, and this tech also has various blending and dirt on the material levels and stuff like that. It's kind of the next generation approach to probably character shading and stuff. I mean, you've sort of seen parts of it being done in, say, the Order 1886, and also I think the UE4 Infiltrator demo used some of these techniques to make the Infiltrator and everything look quite as good, but no one's taking it quite as far as we're doing on the character stuff, because we take it all the way through. So I mean, it's still we're still working on it and doing some R&D, but we've actively been looking at stuff that also kind of defeat the draw call issue in other methods rather than just relying on us having to shift to DX12.
With DX12, have you already sort of prioritized support? Do you know? Are you already trying to build for it, or is this something out in the future?
No. We're trying to. We're in process. So
cool.
It's part of one of the tasks of the engine group right now. So it's actually something that we've commenced on and we'll be working on. I'm just saying that we're doing it. I guess, the right way versus
Right.
just slapping, changing a couple of API calls and saying we got DX12. So it won't be ready till sort of next year.
Sure.
But yeah, we're actively working on it. I mean, it's part of we work pretty closely with AMD, and it's part of one of the things that is a big deal for them and would be a big deal for NVIDIA too.
Right.
But we really want to try to utilize more of the power of sort of today's graphics cards. So it's that. It's also on the compute side where there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're starting to lay off to compute to allow us to do some pretty cool stuff like voxels and stuff like that. So we got a whole bunch of other cool stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. The other thing is that we're focusing a lot of our efforts and work based on the game the most, right? So things like fluid sims that we could use for gas clouds, sort of more of the background sort of compute stuff to allow us to do sort of voxelization of asteroids, and then there's also a whole bunch of sort of GPU tessellation stuff that we've actually planning for our sort of planetary stuff. So we're kind of working on some stuff. It's pretty cool.
You cut out there for a second. That you were planning for your
planetary sort of planets. So we may be able to deliver some of the stuff earlier than I thought we would on like the procedural planet level. So so we'll see what happens to that. But there's some pretty promising stuff right now. So we may actually do something that I thought would be maybe stage 2 with stage 1 of the persistent universe, which would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that would be cool. Is Vulkan of interest to you at all? Is that because?
Yeah, I mean, you mean Vulkan as in sort of, by the way, GL Next and all that.
Right.
Stuff,
yeah.
Right?
You OpenGL.
Yeah, totally. No, it totally is. I mean, I from my standpoint, we would like to be DX12 as well as, OpenGL Next or whatever you want to call it, Vulkan. Because I mean, we want to support Unix. So I mean, we have our servers run on Unix for a start. So the code base works in Unix as well as just straight Windows. But the problem we have is that we don't have a graphics driver yet. There's an OpenGL implementation that was just recently released with CryEngine, but it's pretty it's pretty early. It's pretty slow. And then the other problem is we've done quite a lot of customization already to the pipeline, so the render pipeline. So a lot of the stuff, like it's not simple. It's not a plug and play basically.
Right.
So for us, we sort of have this debate about supporting the. It's like, would we if we didn't have if we only had DX12, would we go back and support DX11 kind of thing? So I think probably our tendency would be to more focus on the next level of OpenGL, but that would be after DX12.
Right. And then, of course, DX11 is still fully supported in Star Citizen. You're not just abandoning it and moving on.
DX11 fully supported. So basically, you need DX11 or above. We're not going to abandon it. So we're going to make sure it performs pretty well on DX11, and then with DX12, it steps it up. And some of the refactoring is going to help no matter what, even for DX11, because just being better about organizing your resources and data and Jobifying it, even though you may still be bottlenecked on the draw call issue, there's plenty of other stuff that can be parallelized on the render, and so that will benefit DX11 as well.
In terms of the Star Citizen stuff, more specifically, outside of all the technical things going on, is there anything you want to address for fans or bring up or say to them?
I mean, we have CitizenCon in a couple of weeks. We're going to show some stuff that hopefully people will like. I think they will. We're going to show some other tech stuff that has more to do with Squadron 42. And the multi-crew that we demoed back in Gamescom is moving along quite nicely. So that's something we're pretty confident of being able to share with people in October, probably towards the end of October. But it's looking good, and I think people will actually have a lot of fun because it's a big level, and it's not an empty level. There's lots of things to do, so it's like a bit of a playground.
Right.
So I'm actually kind of looking forward to people getting out there, getting in their ships, whether they're a multi-crew ship or a single-seater ship, and flying around and just kind of getting into trouble with each other, against each other, encountering AI. It's the very, very, very beginning stages of kind of like what the actual sort of persistent universe in space will feel like.
Right.
So it's not a sort of limited arena combat map. It's not just going to be about small single seat fighters dogfighting. So I'm actually I'm pretty interested to see the community get into that and the kind of cool stuff that I'm sure I'll see in videos.
Yeah.
I was just saying I was looking forward to getting the multi-crew in people's hands, because really it's going to have all the core elements. It'll have FPS. It will have sort of kind of the social PU elements. Obviously, it'll have the dogfighting flying around, which is Arena Commander. And it's sort of like the basic skeleton that the full persistent universe will be on. And although it's missing lots of features and functionality, we'll be adding those on as every month as we go along. It really will be the first time that people will get more of the sort of scope or scale of the possibility of Star Citizen. The detail, the whole idea of being on foot, walking around a space station, getting into a ship, powering it up, flying off, coming across a derelict, getting EVA and cross to investigate the derelict, or going back in your ship, flying to an abandoned space station, landing on it, and going and exploring it and finding some items or whatever, and then getting into gunfight with other players. All that sort of stuff is going to be possible and available on the multi-crew release, which is with our PU alpha. Right now it's 1.3. So I'm pretty excited to sort of see how people react and the kind of things they'll do and the videos they'll record, because it's essentially going to show the framework of what will be so cool about Star, because it's that sort of fidelity and being able to sort of transition between those states is something you don't get on any other game. So you have space games where you can travel to loads of different star systems and trade between them and everything, but you don't have that sense of like visceral, like being inside a ship or being inside the environment or being running around a detailed city or whatever, and then get in a ship and fly somewhere else and visit some other place. So I think just the early stage of that will hopefully get people excited and reminding them why why they backed Star Citizen, and even though it's taking longer than everyone would like it to take, that it's worth it.